Hi everyone, I'm Jeferson Valadares from Doppio. We're a voice games company based in Portugal. If you have no idea what voice games are, you come to the right place. So we'll explain just a little bit about what my presentation is about. I'm just going to give like a bit of an overview of the space, like what people have been doing, and then like also like give you some ideas in case you get interested in how you can get it, join the excitement. So as I mentioned, we're here to talk about voice games. It's a category that it's growing. I mean, you may not have ever heard of it, but it's definitely like getting more and more popular with the users. Our company is Doppio. We were formed about 2 years ago specifically to investigate the space and try to explore and figure out what's exciting, what works. I've been making games for over 20 years. I've worked with several people over there in Bucharest over the years. Some of you may know me, but yeah, the idea is that we had is like, okay, this is really exciting. It's a new way to interact. Like, how can we make the most of it? All right, so let's go to the first question you may have, which is like, okay, so what are even these things? And I'll start by saying that many times when we talk about it, or when I say that I'm doing this, like a lot of people say, oh, it's just an audio thing, right? And the answer is no. I mean, there are audio only games. This is an example of a game that was published in Japan, which was designed for people who couldn't see. So like all they could do is like listen to the audio and then click the controller or press a button on the controller at the right time. So those games exist, like 100% audio games. That's not exactly what voice games are. There's also like just because it's sound, it doesn't mean it's voice, right? So I think that's the other thing. Like voice specifically means like there's some sound in like there's some modulation and maybe there's some words and other things. And in several games, like all it matters is if there's some noise. And I'll give an example of the original Zelda had in Japan, and the Japanese version had a microphone in the controller, as you can see there, the Famicom. And then if you, and there's a boss that like it would be easier to beat if you said something to him. So like I'll just show you like a little bit of clip of it. Remember those amazing graphics. Get ready. Okay, so here's the boss battle. Boss would appear. This would actually be quite hard if you didn't know. But if you knew, you could just... And then they did that. Just collect terrier. So easy. But yeah, so I mean, he specifically said in one sentence over there, but like in reality, you could say almost anything and it would work. So that's kind of, I don't categorize that as like voice yet, but more specifically talking about games where you use your voice, right? And so they call it voice activated. It's not necessarily a new thing. So the first one that I could find anyway is this chess playing game. In chess, you can tell people what to do by saying knight to whatever, right? So I think this is the how it worked. It's also like not necessarily, even if you talk about commercial video games, like in '85, there's this video game called Halcyon, which not a lot of people know because it didn't actually launch, but they did a lot of work into like having the ability to control your voice, etc. I'll show you guys because this is quite interesting to see that people have been thinking about this for a long time.
Welcome to the thrills and excitement of NFL football.
If you've ever felt that you could have called a better game than your favorite quarterback, your time has arrived. Courtesy of the ultimate in video entertainment, this voice-activated Laserdisc computer.
Do you want to play?
Yes.
Nice to see you again, down there.
Stack.
Short pass versus stack.
This is Halcyon, the first interactive Laserdisc video system for the home. It's like talking to the computer HAL in the movie 2010, but this isn't a movie.
He's playing an intelligent game. If you're not playing a good football game, he's going to beat you.
Rick Dyer created the Halcyon system. He's the same programmer who developed the popular arcade game Dragon's Lair. Designing Halcyon took him 6 years and cost $6 million.
Don Dare.
Once you've programmed your voice into the system, Halcyon recognizes you, calls you by name, and keeps track of your progress in several types of adventure or live-action games, like football, hundreds of plays have been gathered from traditional rivalries and stored on the Laserdisc. You either play against a friend or challenge the computer, picking your plays. This is Don Dare reporting.
Yeah, so you guys can see, like, it's a really cool idea. I think, like, the bit like being a quarterback, it's all about, like, calling for the play and the pressure time or whatever. So they're kind of trying to replicate that. Maybe a little bit too ambitious for 1985, but yeah. And then I would also say, like, when people talk about voice, they think, oh, it's audio and you just use your voice. Well, not necessarily. You can also use other things, right? So several of I guess another one that's I guess like considered a influential game in the voice space is Seaman from the Dreamcast. Yeah, Dreamcast had a lot of crazy games, as you guys can see. And I don't even know I can explain this, but basically it's a game where, like, you talk to some character on the screen. We'll see it very, very soon. And then you also play like a controller, right? So you use the controller for certain things and you talk for some other things.
Hello.
So, what month is your birthday in?
October.
You were born in October?
Yes.
Let's try that again. In what month were you born?
October.
You were born in October?
Yes.
I wonder if people would say you're a trick or a treat.
Treat.
Like the spice?
Yes.
Well, you can look, but don't touch.
I don't want to touch you.
What do you want?
To touch you.
I don't know that word.
You just said it.
So, what day is your birthday on?
2nd.
The 2nd?
Yes, bitch.
Mahatma Gandhi was also born on October 2nd. I hope you are as peaceful as he. I would loathe to be stuck in here with an aggressive human being.
Bad luck for
Fuck you.
Bad luck for him. Anyway, so you guys saw, like, this is like an early example of, like, conversational game, right? So, like, there's a character, asks you questions, and there's some confirmation. A lot of the stuff that's in there, like, people use these days. So if you go to, like, play like a story game on Alexa, for example, you see a lot of the same kind of types of patterns. So yeah, the game is, like, interesting, even though it's crazy. I mean, of course, they made, like, this fish thing, and then you talk, and the start of the game is voiced by Leonard Nimoy. It's, like, super, like, nothing makes sense about it. And yeah, another, like, example, a more recent Mass Effect 3, like, on the Kinect version, like, you had, because Kinect had a microphone. I don't know if you guys remember saying Xbox on and Xbox off, like, but yeah, that you could also play, use some of the powers using it, right? So, like, here's, like, a little clip of how that worked. But yeah, somebody basically would activate some of the powers or give orders to your teammates.
Move, Caden.
Yeah, so you ask Caden to go there.
Singularity.
Then instead of, like, pressing the button to cast the spell,
Open fire.
same thing. Instead of, like, pressing the button to shoot, you just say it.
Caden, overload. Nice.
I think the nice there was optional, but yeah, I mean, this you get the gist of it. So, like, it's a lot of stuff happening. You could be, sending some of these control commands by your controller, but sometimes complicated. What is it again? Like, overload my teammate on the right. Like, how does this work? And sometimes it's just easier to say it. So I think there's you can see a little bit of the power there. And if you talk about voice games, a lot of people say, oh, it's like games for Alexa or something like that. And yes, I think that's a big part of it. They're not just those games, but I mean, these devices are definitely driving their adoption. If you look at, like, some of the predictions that people make about device penetration. So if you look at smart speakers, they're predicted to be the fastest thing in people's homes. Faster than smartphones, faster than internet. Like, so it's already, I think, a third of U.S. households have it. Over a third, I think, already. So again, it's like a thing that came out of nowhere and is, like, super popular. I think part of the reason is because they're, like, cheap. I mean, if you think about, like, some of these other more exoteric like controllers for games, VR, like it's a bunch of things, cables and complicated things. This thing is, most of it is streaming audio, so it's just like you say something, the audio goes to over the cloud to be processed somewhere, and then some audio comes back. So it's actually like the device itself doesn't have to be very expensive. So you can buy these things for like 10, 20 bucks. You can use devices you already have, like a phone, or different things as well. So I think, or your computer. So I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so accessible. And then if you just look at the installed base of specifically for speakers, it's already like massive. This is from last year, so it's already outdated, but you can see already, it's not necessarily a niche thing anymore. Like there's a lot of people with devices that can do these things already. And yeah, a lot of people think, oh, maybe it's an Amazon thing. Maybe they know Google has the assistant as well, but really everyone's on this, because I think voice, if you think about the change that voice is making in the world, and even more so, I think after the pandemic, where we don't want to be touching things anymore. Like Amazon is in the space because they have Amazon's job is to like get you whatever you need, right? So if you want to buy something, like they're the ones who want to give it to you. In a world where you're gonna be doing those requests by voice, like if they're not there to listen, like they might lose the channel, right? So it's very important for them to have that. Same thing with Google. In a world where you're not actually searching on a browser anymore or on a phone, you're just calling out, hey, like what is this? If that's not Google, then they're gonna lose like their biggest asset, right, to search. And if you go, the list goes on. Like if you can see, like here, this is like pretty much all big tech companies around the world are in this space. So it's a really big kind of effort by everyone to stay in this game. Okay, so hopefully I gave you a little bit of a taste of like people having thought about this thing before. Maybe the tech wasn't quite there yet, but yeah, the tech's coming, install base is coming. So like, okay, what actually a game? Let's talk about games, right? Like, what can you do with this stuff? If you go and look at the stores, and the smart speaker stores in particular, like you see, like Amazon's a little bit simpler. They say they kind of divide into two types of games. There's like games, and then there's like trivia, which is like I think probably one of the biggest uses that these games have so far. Google goes a little bit deeper, but I mean, really, I think it's interesting to go into like the top kind of uses. So one very common way for these games to, well, I would say like very common pattern for these games is some sort of question and answer, right? Because again, it's very natural. We use a voice. It's very simple, so you it doesn't have to be a complicated exchange. Like they'll ask a question, and then if you say the right answer, good. Say the wrong answer, bad. So it's a very simple interaction to design and to implement. So it's not a surprise that there's a lot of these, and including one of the most popular games, which is Jeopardy. I'll play a little bit of it here, just so you guys can see what it's like to play a game.
Ready for the third clue?
Yes.
The next category is... Here comes the song title. Finish the lyrics with the title of a song. Because maybe you're going to be the one that saves me, and after all, you're my this.
What is Wonderwall?
That's correct. The next category is...
Right, so you can see it's like, I mean, this specifically works really well because it's a show on TV that people already know. They know like the question has a specific format, the answer has a specific format, like it's all kind of pre-ready for this, right? And this works as like one of the most popular games in the store. The other very common thing to do is like a story-based game, which again makes sense. It feels a little bit like a text-based adventure. It's not quite the same because it's like these things are like natural language is a bit different when you're saying than when you just type in the commands, but because you can use full sentences as well. And if you remember the text-based adventure games, like it was based like a verb, maybe like a noun and stuff like that. So I think it's a little bit more complex, but I mean, they kind of remind you of that. So I'll play a little bit of the start from one of our games. Our first game, actually, it's the Vortex that we released. Actually, it's the 2-year anniversary was like last week, so it's been live for 2 years. It's still our best performing game. So, but I'll show a little bit about the beginning for it.
Although you remain frozen and can't move, do not be alarmed by the sounds of fire. There is a 53% chance we will successfully extinguish it. However, we have one problem to solve before we can begin extinguishing the fire or waking you from your sleep. My sensors have detected an escalated heart rate. Are the flames causing you to feel afraid?
Yes.
I told you not to be alarmed literally 5.48 seconds ago. I do not understand why you are disregarding my instructions. Hypothesis, you distrust my guidance.
Oh!
Let's continue this evaluation. I need to understand more about who you are and what you want out of life, short as that life may be. Common answers include money, power, love, excitement, happiness, and oh God, I don't want to die. Please don't make me answer this question. What do you want out of life?
Please don't make me answer this question.
I see. Unfortunately, this will not save you from burning to death. It is clear that you are still malfunctioning. I will now proceed to my next question. Is your marital status single, Commander?
Yes.
I thought so. That might be due to your trust issues. In any case, take comfort in the fact that, if you die, you will not be leaving anyone behind to grieve for you.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so you can see there, like, it's a conversation. This is the start of the game, so it's very pointed, like, questions, because we're trying to get people, like, used to the game. But still, you saw that she didn't always answer exactly what the questions were, and, like, there's a lot of, if you're trying to make these things well, like, you gotta make them so they're very robust, and, like, it doesn't matter what people say, you always handle it. And that's kind of part of the magic there, because when it works, you see people, like, delighted. We often see that in the this kind of game. So because the expectation for these things is very low, because we all used, like, voice activated things in the past and they sucked. I think the tradition that has been true, but they're getting better and better. And when you see a good experience, it's coming to the place where it's not the tech's fault anymore. It's really whoever's designing the experience. So it's getting to that place where, same thing with touchscreens, right? Like, they used to be terrible pre-iPhone, and then the iPhone came, and then everybody's like, hey, touchscreen's amazing. But I don't know if you tried to use one before, it was not very good. So it's not just the tech, but also, like, how it gets implemented. Yeah, and then another, like, popular use is companion experiences. So, like, if you play Destiny, Destiny, it's an MMO, there's a lot of stuff you can do, and then they actually created this thing, which is a toy, but basically it's connected to Alexa, and it gives you kind of like your what you should be doing for the day. I'll play a little bit for you here, but it's kind of like a companion experience that if you're really into Destiny, it might help you play the game a little bit better.
Alexa, ask Ghost what's left.
Hunter, according to my data stream, you've done just about everything we needed to do today. Now we can do whatever you want. Here's what's available today. It's nightfall this week. That is, if you're up for the challenge. Furthermore, the Trials of the Night are available now. So many possibilities. It's all so exciting. By the way, there are challenges available on IO. This is also one of the rare moments where he actually shares something with others. Oh, Sir is here today as well. Always coming and going, that one. Let's see what he has for us. That's all I have for you right now, Guardian. Good luck.
Yeah, so it's all like they're playing the MMO, and then they obviously did some of the missions, but you can still, like, if you want to know, like, okay, what could I still be doing? What events are out, like all these things. So instead of having to go to a browser and search it or whatever, or go into a channel and ask people, like, what's going on, like, this thing will basically tell you, like, these are the things you could be doing today. Another thing that's becoming more popular is, like, board games, right? So if you think about the experience of playing a board game, like, could it be augmented by having some AI? Or if you think about Monopoly, like, if the bank is actually fair and there's, like, not someone who's, like, stealing or giving, like, better terms for other people, whatever, right? So I think, like, this is, like, one example of what people are trying to do. It's When in Rome, which also came out, like, a couple of years ago.
Blue team, do you want an easy food and drinks question for 3 points, or a hard slang and language question for 5 points?
Alexa, slang and language.
Okay, Georgie, hit us with a Rio question.
I arranged to meet my friend, but deu bolo. They gave me cake. What happens in Rio if someone gives you cake? Is it A, they didn't show up, B, they brought loads of friends, C, they were very late, or D, they brought me an actual cake?
Alexa, it's A.
Isso, right answer. In Rio, if someone deu bolo, gave cake, it means they didn't show up without any explanation. So annoying.
Oh, I've just heard a rumor that there's a button souvenir in Tokyo. Place it on the board so you don't forget.
Yeah, so you can see the experience here is a little bit like a DM or like a RPG session, right? So it's like handling the questions, but also like saying, oh, now there's this thing over there, and you guys might want to check it out, etc. So this is another way you can kind of use these things. Another very popular use is kids. That's another generation thing. I think kids like who are growing up with these things, they really have the same way you have kids today, like or older kids today who when they're babies they're like swiping at a TV screen. I think you'll have the same thing. Like kids who grow up with this device, they'll be talking to everything, and they kind of be surprised that it's not working. There's a lot of like kids entertainment for this. Of course, a little bit simpler, but I'll show you here like one example from SpongeBob.
Check it out. We've got a real cool customer sauntering in. Whoa, dig this cool clam bake, baby. Slide me an order of kelp fries. Nice and greasy. Ring a ding-ding, Junior. Wait, did he want a kelp fries or kelp rings?
Fries.
Perfect! Way to go, Daddy-O. Those kelp fries are a real groove, baby. You're a big leaguer. Order up!
Right, so you saw there, like, it's a more or less a memory game, but it's with the characters, and it's like nice production values, etc. So this is like another thing that's pretty popular today. If you talk a little bit about what's coming, so of course, I played a lot of audio, so you can see, even though I mentioned it's not an audio thing, but I mean, really, like the first generation of these are very audio focused. But both platforms, like if you look at Google and Alexa specifically, they all have like better graphics now. So like us, for example, we have we built a PAC-MAN game where in partnership with Alexa and Anko, where you control PAC-MAN with your voice. So basically saying like waka waka waka, and then he's moving like on the right. So it sounds crazy, but like I promise you will be able to see this soon once it's live. Ask me in the Q&A, and then I'll let you know like more details. And then the other thing you can do, and I guess the last example here will also show a little bit the graphics, but also the fact that this device also have touchscreen, so it's a little bit mixed. And also, like you saw, many of the experiences at the beginning were very like turn-based. So like you say something, and they say something. Now there's a little bit more freedom. So this last game that I'm going to show today has a little bit of those things combined.
It's good to see you again. What would you like to play?
So you can see you can choose by touching. You don't have to answer.
Take a look. Which difficulty would you like to try?
Easy.
But you can also say, right, it's kind of multimodal.
Let's see the drawings. Get ready.
Here's just going to show me something, and I have to guess like as fast as possible. Just going to keep saying words until I hit the right one, right? So it's a farm thing.
Socks, boots.
All right. Sweet things. What could it be?
Tea. Mug. Cake. Cheese.
I almost said PAC-MAN there, but yeah, you can see the how it works, right? So like it's more real time, and also like cool graphics, like animating based on what you say, etc. So yeah, what's actually coming? I mean, and that's kind of the challenge I would like to leave you guys with is like, we don't really know. This is kind of like one of those frontier spaces where like there's no defining game yet. Like let's say the Angry Birds, the voice hasn't come out yet. Like nobody knows what the platform is going to be remembered for. So there's actually a really good opportunity for you to come in and help create new types of entertainment in a space that's kind of growing and expanding. There's a lot of players as well, so it's not like a niche experience like you might be worried with VR or some other things. This is actually a really popular device. So I think that there's a lot of like cool things here. But yeah, so kind of welcome to see what you guys can do with it in the future. And yeah, thanks for the time. And then yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'm excited to answer whatever things you may have. Thanks.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hey, Catalin.
Great to have you here. So you saw that sounds worked in the presentation. Everything was good.
Yeah, exactly.
Little inside joke there. So happy to have you here, and we already have a few questions.
Cool.
So this is actually multiple questions into one. So how do these games ensure it's the player that gives the commands and not someone else talking in the room? Would random people interfere with a voice game? Do the players have to play in silence?
Yeah, the devices are getting better and better at being able to listen, like when there's like noise and cross conversation, things like that. But yeah, it definitely works best if it's like a single person like talking in a quiet space. These devices can tell like who's speaking. So if you train them, like you have the ability to kind of train your voice to the device, so the device can tell if it's like A or B speaking. So some of these things are possible. Some things work well or not. But yeah, you can. I mean, the ideal scenario is still like in a quiet space, but you can do better than that by doing some more work.
Okay. So another one, how acceptable is it to have text to speech and text to speech and not real actors for a good gameplay experience?
It's a really good question. So our first game we did, we used text to speech for the robots, and I think, but we specifically picked robots because of that reason, because it's a little bit more acceptable if it's coming from if the fantasy supports it, right? So if it's supposed to be like a human and it sounds weird, then like it kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. So I would say generally VO is better. People like to hear human voices, but it does limit. I mean, first is more work, and then kind of limits your ability to change the game. Like our first game, we wanted to learn, so that's why we did text to speech, because we wanted to be able to change and like do the traditional mobile iteration thing. Like you release the game and then see how people are playing and go back and adjust. Like we edited the start of the game like 100 times, so it would be much harder to do that with voiceover. So you got to balance those things. If you have like a very strong story that is just set and you just want to like put it there, then VO is better. I think people prefer voices in general. We definitely found that. But if you have something that supports text to speech, then there's advantages as well. And the text to speech, the quality of text to speech is much better than it used to be. Like if you heard like the conversation in Vortex, I mean, it sounds pretty good. It's not. I mean, sometimes you can tell like that there's but there's many times where like you kind of forget about it. So I think depending on what you're trying to do, text to speech might be good enough. But it kind of depends a little bit on your use case.
And so you said in the presentation to ask you more details in the Q&A about the PAC-MAN game and how that works. So here it is. I'm asking you.
Yeah, the reason why I mentioned this is because the game was not live yet, but it's actually live now. So it went live on Monday. So it's been live for a couple of days. But yeah, so we're really excited about it. It's doing a couple different things. So first, it's a screen game, so you need the screen to play. You can't play just with the speaker. So like you need to have like an Echo Show, which that those devices from Amazon that have a screen. And yeah, the second thing is like we created a new language called Wakanese, and like that's how you tell Pac-Man to go. If you want Pac-Man to go up, you say Waka. Or to the right actually, and if you want Pac-Man to go up, you say Wiki. So yeah, we have people playing and they're like waka waka wiki 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 waka, and then that's how it moves. So it's actually like really funny. Like people have been enjoying it in our test. So we're really excited. It's live. It's a maze game, so hopefully like fans like will recognize it's a Pac-Man game, but it's also a maze game. But it has that kind of twist of you have to talk to Pac-Man in his native language. I mean, you can also say right and up and left and down. It works as well, but it's boring.
Of course. And the last question, how far are we from fully functional voice control games, especially for vision impaired of physically challenged players?
Yeah, I mean, there's already a space. There's a website called audiogames.net. They kind of focus on these type of like 100% audio games, which are made for that kind of audience. So, I mean, there's already a few games on iPhone and on Steam, which are like, designed specifically with those people in mind. Yeah, I mean, the quality is a little mixed. I think, it's an interface problem. It's also an experience problem. So I think it takes companies that dedicate themselves to kind of get good at these things. But the tech, which used to be traditionally the biggest problem, is pretty much like solved. I mean, like there's still a few things that they need to get better, but like we started a couple of years ago, and it is already way better than it used to be 2 years ago. So I think like all this stuff gets better like every few months. So I think it's less about a technical problem now and more about like somebody who wants to solve the problem and then trying with players and learning what works and not, and etc. I mean, kind of like traditional game development stuff. But yeah, I think that's it's more that now than the tech.
Great. Well, very entertaining presentation, and thanks a lot for your answers. Look forward to more interesting stuff related with using voice. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks
Jeff.
for having me. I was really excited to be here, even though I would be even more excited to do it in Bucharest, but for next time.
Next time for sure.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.